It seems that one of the things Jesus was made fun of for while he was hanging on the cross was continuing to be happy with God. Not just like okay with God, but happy with God. Remember that as you read the Psalms, you can, if you picture Jesus saying the words of the Psalms, and a lot of these Psalms, it kind of gives you good insight into what was going on in his life, and that's certainly the case in Psalm 22 throughout pretty much the whole thing. But in particular today, verse 8, where people are saying, well, he trusts in the Lord. Let the Lord rescue him. Let him deliver him, since he delights in him. So David was doing that, apparently. As David was writing the psalm, he was showing his delight in the Lord, even though he was going through very difficult times. And Jesus was doing that too on the cross, showing in some way his delight in God, his happiness with God, letting that radiate in some way, even during horrible, agonizing pain. And that does something for us. It gives us something good to hold on to when we are the ones going through something difficult. And the Apostle Paul writes about that too. One of the places that he writes about that is in Romans chapter 5, where he talks about, he just gives us this good perspective on our suffering, saying that we rejoice in our sufferings. And why do we rejoice in our sufferings? Not because we rejoice in suffering anything. That's not what he means. He says we rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance produces character, and character produces hope. So suffering produces perseverance. The more you suffer, the more God is training you to be able to endure things that are going to come later in your life. He's equipping you through your suffering to be able to get through things that he knows are coming down the road. And so that's a good thing that God is doing. And because we live in a world that will never be anything close to the perfection of heaven, a world that does not really at all help our hearts find good rest from day to day, you are going to need to be trained to endure what's coming. And God is doing that for you right now through your sufferings. So your suffering produces perseverance. Your perseverance produces character. It builds your resolve, your ability to stick to your core beliefs, the ones that come from God. The more you do it, and the more you see that they don't disappoint, that you can guide yourself by what God says in his word. That's your character. And you have a track record of doing that now. The more you suffer, the more you persevere, the more your character is built. You can look back in your life and see that, yeah, God really did not let me down. He really did guide me in the good ways that he said that he would, which is also related to the character producing hope. You also have a stockpile of examples from your own past. The longer you live, the more you go through suffering, the more you endure, the more you persevere, the more your character is built. It's like you have reasons for hope from your own life. God did it for me in the past. He's going to do it again for me in the future. God did not fail to keep his promises in the past. In the present, I can hold on to his promises and take confident steps towards the future. And then he goes on after that, after talking about suffering produces perseverance, perseverance produces character, character produces hope, all these good things that God is doing through our suffering. And he says, and hope does not disappoint because God has poured out his love into our hearts by the Holy Spirit. All of that is God loving you and caring for you. And the more you go through life, the more you have examples of God loving you and caring for you. Examples that are beneficial for you, and examples that are beneficial for people who are maybe some years behind you and just starting to suffer now some of the things that you were suffering long ago. And you have a testimony to share with them that God continued to love you, and the fact that you see any of this, that you believe any of this, though sometimes it's hard to see and hard to believe. These are things of faith. But the fact that you can hold on to it and come back to it and feel settled in it is proof that God has given his Holy Spirit to you. God himself is living within you. Those are good things to hold on to when you're going through your suffering. Paul talks about it again in 2 Corinthians 4, where he says, our light and our momentary troubles, they're doing something. They are achieving for us a glory that far outweighs all of them. In some way, God is working your struggles and your suffering, the things that are very, very difficult, whether they're coming from the world, whether they're coming from Satan, whether they're coming from your own heart. He's taking those things and he's using them to achieve something for you that you could never achieve for yourself. A very glorious future. None of this makes any kind of pain or suffering feel good. but it does give you something really good to hold on to when you're in the middle of pain and suffering. Reminders that God is with you, that God won't forget you. But I want you to think one more time of Jesus in his pain and suffering, delighting in God. What was it that he delighted in? It's a little bit different than what we get to delight in as we go through our pain and suffering. We get to delight in the good things that God is doing for us: perseverance, character, hope, his love, the Holy Spirit, all these wonderful things, the glory that outweighs all of those things. But Jesus didn't need any of those things. What Jesus delighted in, what kept him going, was the thought of you being able to hold on to all of this. It was the thought of giving you something so good to believe in. The thought of giving you the good thought that God is going to hold on to you, even if we aren't always so good at holding on to him during our times of pain and suffering. That's why he was there. That's why he stayed there. That's why he died. And then rose again. To remind you that nothing in all creation is going to stop him from holding on to you and being there for you when you need him. God gives us something good to hold on to all the time. Rest well tonight, my friends.